A woman was asleep on the plane until a trembling voice crackled over the intercom. "Is there any fighter pilot on board?" Jamie Wilson's words sounded shredded by the wind, echoing through the Boeing 747 as it crossed one of the worst storms ever recorded over the North Atlantic. Rain slammed against the windows like hammers. Lightning wrapped around the aircraft. The fuselage shuddered like a taut wire. 312 passengers, children, crying adults, praying, some already typing their final goodbyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jamie tried to steady his voice. "We have a severe medical emergency. Captain David Mitchell is unconscious. I need immediate assistance from anyone with combat flight experience." In seat 23C, Keisha Warren opened her eyes. 34, once trained to sleep anywhere during missions where sleep was a luxury. Half of her still lingered in the warm haze of rest, but a desperate note in that voice snapped her awake like a switch. Keisha smoothed her low ponytail, adjusted her plain shirt and unremarkable jeans, the look of an anonymous traveler. But behind her eyes, a hidden control panel lit up. Observe, assess, decide. In first class, Richard Blackwell lifted his imported glasses loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. If anyone here is qualified, they wouldn't be flying economy. His gaze slid over Keisha, pausing on her plain shirt for half a second before drifting away with a cold smile. Not her. The jet jolted violently. Screams rippled through the cabin. Jamie's voice came again. "Anyone with military flight experience step forward now. I'm alone, facing a category storm. I've never done this alone." His voice cracked at the last word. Richard shot up. "Listen here, kid," he shouted toward the cockpit. "My brother-in-law's a private pilot. I've flown with him for hundreds of hours. I can help." A flight attendant hurried over, polite but firm. "Sir, we need combat experience. Civilian flying isn't enough for these conditions." Richard puffed his chest. "I paid $15,000 for this seat. I've got more experience than anyone here." Keisha stood. No drama, no raised voice, just steady grounded steps down the trembling aisle. Eyes followed her, skeptical, dismissive, doubtful. She stopped in front of the attendant, speaking low but cutting through the noise. "Colonel Keisha Warren, United States Air Force. 500 flight hours in the F-22 Raptor. Extreme Condition Navigation Specialist." The air froze for a beat. Richard scoffed, shaking his head. "You're joking. Respect to the military, but I'm not betting my life on fantasy." From the row ahead, an elderly woman whispered loudly enough. "She looks too young. Is she really qualified?" The words were small, but sharp prejudice sliding through the cabin like cold air. Keisha didn't argue. She moved. "Emergency decompression protocol at cruise altitude. Don oxygen mask immediately. Emergency descent to 10,000 feet. Maintain descent angle below 15 deg to avoid structural overload. Squawk 7700. Establish ATC contact. Prioritize safest vector under current weather patterns. If navigation fails, switch to altitude reference." She spoke non-stop for over 2 minutes. No stumble, no hesitation, pure muscle memory. Jamie appeared at the cockpit door, pale, but his eyes lit up. He answered instantly when Keisha asked. "Altitude 38,000 feet. IAS 450 knots. Crosswind 120 km/h, gusting 160. He didn't need to check a chart. Her authority steadied him off the cliff of panic. Richard sneered. "Anyone can spit numbers off Wikipedia." Keisha turned slightly, her voice flat as calm water before a strike. "There are 3 kinds of pilots: those who fly when it's easy, those who fly when it's hard, and those who fly when it's impossible." The plane lurched. Passengers shrieked. A suitcase burst from the overhead. Keisha didn't grab a seat. She stood rooted, an anchor in the storm. "In my career," she went on as if speaking to the storm itself, "I've saved 17 aircraft from what the manuals call unrecoverable. But what makes me the right one for this moment isn't medals or hours logged. The plane pitched again. She didn't blink. It's that I'm the only one here who's flown through combat zones with both engines down, nav, destroyed missiles closing in, and still brought my squad home. She nodded to the attendant. Clear the way, and walked. Passing Richard, she paused just long enough for him to swallow hard. When we land safely, we'll talk. Today, you'll learn a costly lesson. The cockpit door opened. Medical monitors screeched inside. Keisha disappeared beyond it, leaving behind a cabin holding its breath. Someone whispered, "Maybe? She's real." For the first time in years, Richard Blackwell felt a cold line trace his spine wrong, so wrong. But how wrong, inside the cockpit, Captain David Mitchell convulsed white foam, spilling at the corner of his mouth. Warning lights strobed red and amber. The instrument panel blazed like a midnight city. Jamie stood frozen, hand hovering above the yoke, eyes drowned in fear. Keisha slid past, pressed 2 fingers to the captain's wrist, pulse breath, fast check, then lifted her head, voice slicing the air, immediate first aid. We've got about 15 minutes before cardiac arrest. She called for oxygen AED airway kit while pulling the cabin mic. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice was low and solid as poured concrete. Colonel Keisha Warren will assume command until we land safely. Remain seated, buckle up, follow crew instructions. In the cabin, the noise dropped in half. Human instinct knew this was a voice to obey. "Jamie," she ordered without turning fuel and cabin pressure report every 30 seconds. "Don't make me wait." "Yes, ma'am." Jamie replied by reflex like someone had just tuned his strings back into harmony. She swept over the weather radar. The storm towers stacked like fortresses. Wind arrows biting into each other. SOP would say divert. But divert, where when every bearing was painted red, Keisha sketched a curve on her notepad, cut through a pressure gap. Find a narrow air tube, hold the 747 inside the single quiet pocket carved in a howling storm. Not blind risk. Calculate, measure, hold the line. The cockpit door cracked open. Richard slipped in, clutching the frame like a man claiming rights. This is madness. His eyes darted to Keisha's notepad numbers for VS bank angle, green arc speeds. "Your braking procedure. I demand to speak to air traffic control right now." Keisha didn't turn. "Mr. Blackwell, this cockpit is not for tourists. Return to your seat. Nothing more." The door clicked shut. Silence reclaimed. "Jamie," she said, "we don't divert, we cut through. Keep bank within load limits. Speed in the green. I'll nurse this bird through the slot." Jamie swallowed hard. "Colonel, that's against the book." Keisha's smile was razor thin. "Manuals are written for averages. Tonight is an exception. Knowing the rules deep enough to bend them, that's how you stay alive." A flight attendant poked in doctor on board Dr. Patricia Chen, Chief of Neurosurgery First Class. "Bring her," Keisha said. Dr. Chen knelt by Captain Mitchell, eyes scanning monitors, hands testing pupils. Rhythm unstable. "I'll monitor G-triggers. Keep the ride steady. 1 second of eye contact, no need for resumes pros new pros." Report Keisha called. "Fuel within limits. Cabin pressure steady. Wind shear at this level." 160 knots, Jamie answered. "Good." Keisha eased the yoke-trimmed thrust, kept the nose inside the corridor she had drawn. Outside, lightning whipped across the cloud walls like blades of white steel. Inside, clipped commands, right person, right task, right time, turned this small room into a command center. Keisha, Dr. Chen, said, eyes fixed on the captain. "I need no sudden G-jolts. Any spike could trigger another seizure. Understood." Keisha softened her grip, smoothing every micro-correction like an artist brushing strings. The jet lurched crosswind slam. Keisha absorbed it with a precise bank speed locked in the green sketch line on paper mirroring line in the sky. Jamie whispered half awe, half disbelief. It's like the plane is part of her body. In the cabin, Richard refused silence. Listen to me, she's no pilot. Look at what she's wearing. Victoria, his wife, broke for the first time Richard enough. Still his words oiled through the rose. Prejudice always finds ears. Keisha hit the intercom voice cold yet warm. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're afraid. Look at me, I am not. I've flown through sandstorms with dead navigation through midnight with both engines out with missiles on my tail. Tonight I'll take you home. Sit tight, breathe, trust me. Jamie drew a deep breath. He already did. Keisha checked her watch. Time. She tapped the radio, switch 121.5. Jamie turned the dial. The military emergency frequency opened like a door. Andrews Air Force Base. This is Colonel Keisha Warren, call sign Spectre. Request identity, confirm, and support. Medical and weather emergency Boeing, 747 mid-storm. Captain incapacitated. I assume command. A half-beat pause. Then a low, clear voice. Spectre, is that you? This is Commander Alex Rodriguez, military ATC. Identity confirmed. We lost your radar 20 minutes ago. Air Force is already mobilizing search. In the cabin, the name Spectre cracked the air like lightning. Someone gasped. Richard went pale. Andrews Keisha continued request vectors for emergency runway, suitable for Boeing 747 priority on-site medical. I will cut through, storm need a clean corridor. Spectre, absolute priority, Rodriguez replied. We're clearing the skies. Baltimore or Dover standing by. EMS deployed. In the cabin, Dr. Chen allowed a flicker of a smile at the phrase, absolute priority. And Richard Blackwell, the man who claimed money buys safety, was staring at the woman he dismissed as not first class now carrying the weight of the entire Air Force behind her. Jamie Keisha said, eyes never leaving the torn horizon, keep comms with Andrews. I'll focus on control. We're coming to the hardest part. Yes, ma'am. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, a shared heartbeat had been set, and when a second female voice cut into the channel deep, calm, sharp as a blade. Spectre, this is General Patricia Hayes, Pentagon Air Combat Command. We confirm your record Operation Tempest Shield 2019. The entire East Coast is watching. You have absolute priority. Bring them home. Keisha tightened her grip on the yoke. Copy. And the 747, not a fighter jet but heavy and stubborn as a flying city, began to obey the hand of a legend, newly called by her true name. Spectre. This is Andrews. Urgent weather update. Commander Rodriguez's voice hammered through the headset. Storm system has intensified beyond forecast. Winds at 180 kilometers per hour. Hail the size of baseballs. Multiple airports along your route have closed runways. The cockpit went so quiet you could hear a seatbelt buckle click. Jamie swallowed hard. Dr. Patricia Chen lifted her eyes from Captain Mitchell for a beat, then bent back over the monitors. Keisha gripped the yoke like the hand of a thrashing beast. Andrews, copy. Request corridor for Baltimore or Dover. Give me the cleaner path medical teams on standby. Another voice cut in low and commanding Spectre. This is General Patricia Hayes, Air Combat Command. The President has been briefed. 13 bases are tracking your flight path. You have absolute priority. In the cabin, whispers rose, then died at once. Spectre, those words had just come over a military frequency. Victoria gripped her child's hand tighter. Richard stared at the bulkhead as though waking from a fever, where names and privilege no longer worked. Jamie Keisha said, eyes locked on the shredded horizon, numbers altitude 38, stepping down. I want reports every 30 seconds, fuel pressure, wind shear. Open channel with Dover AFB. Yes, ma'am. Jamie's hands flew, his voice steadier now. He was coming back because someone had set the rhythm. Cabin Keisha keyed the intercom seatbelts fastened. Prepare for G fluctuations. Crew check masks, lock trolleys. Everyone stay seated. Short, clear. No residue of fear to cling to. The cockpit door stayed shut, but Richard's voice still bled through the cabin. PA, listen to me. She's gambling with our lives. Victoria turned her look sharp as glass. Richard, enough. No one backed him now. Her name had just been spoken by the Air Force. His was just noise. Dover here, Rodriguez cut back in. Runway 14 foamed. Fire crews ready. EMS waiting at stop. Surface winds shifting. Microburst possible. Spectre. Do you want autoland or hand fly? Keisha's mouth tilted like a craftsman spotting a trusted tool. Hand fly. I need to feel the airplane. Copy hand fly. Dr. Chen said softly. I'll count G-load. If it spikes, I'll call it. Thank you, Doctor. Keisha feathered the throttles. Jamie, give me lower level altitude's icing status outside temp. OAT minus 38. Icing thin layer. Strongest shear at 26,000. Roger. General Hayes came back drawing a line in the storm. Spectre confirm. Task Tempest 2019, you guided a C-130 through a sandstorm nav destroyed only by radio brought 17 people home. Confirmed, Keisha said as if reporting the weather. In the cabin, a collective gasp. 17 dropped like a stone shattering the pond of prejudice. I'm sorry. Richard's voice shook soft for the first time. I was apology later. Mr. Blackwell, Keisha's voice cut through no anger, just order. Right now, we live first. Lightning tore across the sky. Thunder cracked like artillery. The plane jolted hollow in the gut, then dropped. Jamie shouted, sheer bank right. 7 hold speed, Keisha murmured, like taming a wild animal. The 747 settled its body, rounding out like a marble, dropping into a groove. Jamie, entering storm, I need VS 4,000 feet per minute, 50 to 70 seconds, then ease back to 2,000. Don't breach structural, copy, I'm counting. Dover cut in Spectre Poppy lights, high sensitivity. ILS operational, but you're hand flying, we've got you on radar, I see it. Keisha drew a long breath. Entering the tube. She pitched the nose banked with the smoothness of a string, drawn across steel speed, locked in the green arc, making the weight of a flying city slide to her will. Jamie counted the rhythm. 4,000, 3,900, 4,050, hold, fuel steady, pressure steady, G 1.2, 1.3. Holding, Dr. Chen whispered. Captain stable. In the cabin, children stopped crying. Adults clutched hands. A passenger whispered, it's like someone just switched the wind off around us. They couldn't see how Keisha read the storm. They only felt it, the invisible bent into obedience. Andrews, Keisha called when I punch below storm base, keep corridor sterile all the way to Dover. I don't want a single bird drifting across my line. Copy Spectre. You are the only aircraft in the eastern sky right now. Jamie turned eyes bright like a child watching a magic trick laid bare by science. Ma'am, we're doing it. Keisha nodded once. Not yet. Hard part's the bottom. Near ground shear's ugly. Crosswinds shifting. Copy. And somewhere between thunder wind warning lights, the breathing of 312 souls aligned with the hands of one pilot. She didn't shout her skill. She just flew. Now, count. Starting Jamie. VS 4,000, holding. Bank 7, 7.2, steady, speed in the green. G 1.3, stable, Dr. Chen said. Captain stable. The pressure gap opened like a tunnel door. Keisha dipped the nose, holding a curve as clean as calligraphy, letting gravity and lift negotiate without argument. Outside, cloud walls spun like plaster ripped by lightning. Inside, needles obeyed her hand. The first 70 seconds flowed smooth as ink. Spectre Dover, here, ILS localizer, strong glide slope, flickering from storm interference. We see a clean descent. "I'm not marrying ILS tonight," Keisha quipped under her breath, just holding hands for the photo. In the cabin, laughter cracked open, tiny brittle, the first since rain had hammered glass. It felt like sunlight breaking through. "Shear building below," Jamie warned. "Layer 26 is rough. Reduce VS to 2000 after 70, Keisha said. Hold bank. 70, 2000 set." A sideways punch airframe staggered like tripping on a stair. Hold Keisha stroked the yoke. The beast fell back in line. G 1.7. "Warning," Dr. Chen called. "Easy," Keisha murmured to herself as if to a string section. G slipped back to 1.4. Stable Dr. Chen exhaled. Cabin Victoria pressed her lips to her child's forehead, eyes wet. Richard reached, hesitated, then held. He said nothing. For once, silence was right. Andrews' General Hayes came on low-level reports, microburst on final. Wind shifted 300 degrees in 10 minutes. "Copy," Keisha answered. "Dover, clear me." Runway 14 lights full. Position and fire trucks split at runway ends. No red flares in my face on flare. Roger. Foam still spread. Engines standing by. Jamie gear down, 3500. Flaps by my call. Roger, 3500. Jamie gear down. The warm thud of gear dropping anchors ready for sea. Flaps 1, 5, 15. Hold. Wind slapped, wings groaned. Keisha fed throttle nose steady. Localizer clean. Jamie, glide slope flickering. "I see the lights," Keisha whispered like to an old friend. Runway 14. The storm tore open a seam of light. At the bottom, an avenue of brilliance stretched straight as a promise. Spectre surface winds 210 shifting 230 gusts 40 Dover called. Crosswind left Keisha. Jamie Crabb left I'll kick straight. Copy. Flaps 25, 30. Set. Vref. Jamie read, hold Vref +5 for gusts. Keisha translated every slap of air into rhythm. In the cockpit, sweat slid down her temple lost under the headset band. Her eyes never left the center line. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't change. Only breath deep even. 500 Jamie steady, 400 sheer. The jet dropped like a chair yanked away. Hold nose, throttle, Keisha said. Lights climbed back into place like a snake obeying charm. 300, poppy, red-white, perfect. 200. Crosswind left strong. Crab left good. 100, flare, set, 70. Richard, a small voice in his skull, whispered, "Shut up." He did. 50, 30, 20. Kick right rudder align nose, lift, hold, and then the storm's final cruelty. A cold wall of wind slammed across the runway microburst, the storm's last wicked grin. "Sheer!" Jamie screamed, lights blurred. Poppy bled 4 red. Sirens. Dr. Chen Ji rising. Hold. Keisha said not loud, but steel. She fed throttle-trimmed angle, kicked rudder-eased, bank, snapped the line back like a master carving on ice. 10, 5. Outside, fire trucks braced white foam laid out to the horizon. Inside, 312 hearts locked in suspension. The landing gear kissed the foam, and the storm threw one last punch. A crosswind slammed the tail, skidding the fuselage half a width. Right. Rudder. Jamie cried. Keisha stamped straight. Fuselage corrected. Nose held. Throttle eased, then pulled. Tires shrieked across foam a thick black stroke, scoring a white page. The aircraft rocked once, twice, 3 beats, and balanced at the knife edge between collapse and survival. Night held its breath. The storm held its breath. 312 souls held their breath. Right rudder. Keisha stomped straight. The tail, shoved half a fuselage off-center by swirling crosswind, snapped back like a beast tamed in the instant. The landing gear kissed the foam once, twice, 3 beats, then bit the center line. Spoilers popped, reversers, half open, throttle feathered to hold direction instead of just killing speed. Center, Keisha murmured to herself. Center. 80 knots, 70, 60. Jamie read like a prayer. Hold straight, don't break deep on foam, Keisha commanded. Steer with rudder. Copy. Outside, the wind still lashed like it wanted its plane back. Fire trucks roared alongside red lights, painting both edges of vision. Dr. Chen kept counting G-loads like a heartbeat, 1.2, 1.1, stable. Captain stable. The medical monitor softened, no longer howling like a trapped animal. Reversers idle, Keisha called. Speed brakes, hold, flaps stay. Center line. 50 knots, Jamie. Deploy more reverse, no. Cancel, hold rudder. 40. Give me 10 degrees right, Keisha said. The 747 shuddered, then obeyed. 30, 25, 20, idle. She closed the reversers, let the engines breathe like oxen exhausted after a climb. Ground, this is Spectre. Exiting runway at Kilo or Mike. Spectre, turn off Kilo. Follow me to your right. EMS standing by. Jamie, taxi light on. Hold center line to Kilo, on, cabin. Keisha opened the intercom, remain seated. Belts fastened. Do not rise. Medical teams will board. Her voice wasn't loud, but it locked into the nerves of 312 people who had just learned silence. Richard Blackwell gripped Victoria's hand. He wanted to say something, apology, gratitude, a cry, but no word came. He stared at the green aisle lights as if seeing all the money in the world turned into cheap bulbs with one job to guide. Kilo appeared like the exit from a nightmare. Turn off Kilo. Jamie confirmed. Turn, Keisha rolled smooth rudder, carving the arc like a fountain pen, writing a perfect curve. Ground radio again, Spectre Park, Alpha 3. EMS to your left. Foam crews holding back. Roger. APU on Keisha. APU, available Jamie. Engine 2 cutoff. Engine 3. The rumble faded like someone pulling a heavy blanket over trembling shoulders. Stop. Brakes. Chocks. The lights outside softened, less savage. The storm still raged, but inside a pocket of calm carved out of night. Cabin, Keisha said. We have landed safely. Stay seated for medical access to the captain. Then follow crew instructions. Nothing more. No triumphant flourish. Just the verbs required. The front door opened. Cold wind tore in, carrying the smell of foam and electricity. EMS surged aboard like a team change at halftime stretcher oxygen tanks med bags. Dr. Chen gave a rapid handoff. This rhythm, these neurosigns avoid strong stimuli. They nodded, glanced at Keisha, and moved. Andrew's radio buzzed. Commander Rodriguez's voice, Spectre ground, confirms your stop. The entire East Coast just exhaled. Keisha closed her eyes a beat, sending one word into the dark behind her lids. Thank you for keeping the sky clean. Another voice, warm but firm. This is General Hayes. Well done, Spectre. Jamie pulled off his headset, laughed once without sound, throat dry. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Say thank you to yourself. Keisha replied, because you came back when it counted. He nodded, eyes wet. Cabin, the first sobs. A little girl asked her mother, Mom, is she a superhero? The mother smiled through tears. No, she's a pilot. Mid-cabin. Richard half rose, but a flight attendant lifted a hand. Sir, please remain seated. Not yet. He sat. Yes. For the first time he obeyed. EMS wheeled the stretcher down the aisle. Dr. Chen stayed close. Captain Mitchell went with the steady pulse of the monitor, background music no one wanted but all were grateful for. Keisha watched a second, then turned back to the panel. Post-landing checklist still waiting. Discipline doesn't end at applause. Spectre Ground called Base Command requests to meet you at ramp office once passengers are safe. Roger. She pulled off her headset, peeled off gloves. For a moment, her bare hand rested on the yoke, thanks the way a musician taps an instrument after a long piece. Jamie, go with them, hand over to maintenance. I'll address the cabin. Yes, ma'am. Keisha opened the intercom one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dover. Thank you for staying calm so we could work. Crew will assist row by row. Please remain seated until directed. Medical cases will leave first. Applause broke ragged, then rising into a wave. Keisha didn't bow. She listened and carried it as if it were for those not here, the ones who had taught her to fly through the dark. The front hatch closed again. Outside, the storm still screamed. But inside, the night was split in two before a name was spoken true, and after everyone knew it. Dover AFB, ramp office. White walls, neon lights, the smell of old coffee and wet coats. Keisha entered with Jamie. Commander Alex Rodriguez was already waiting, flight suit still soaked from rain. He raised a salute like in an old film, crisp, sharp. Spectre. Commander. The whole sky just sat down, he said. Well done. Keisha nodded, nothing more. General Patricia Hayes appeared on the secure glass screen. Colonel Warren, you just wrote a line into the handbook for the people who write handbooks. Keisha's mouth curved 0.5 millimeter. I only did my job. Exactly why, Hayes replied, it matters. Jamie stood at the edge of the room clutching a hot paper cup. Rodriguez looked his way. Wilson, you steadied fast. Good. Don't forget the feeling of a button coming back under your finger after your mind wandered. That saves lives. Yes, sir. Tomorrow night you might wake to sirens in your head. Fine. Call us. We know how to switch them off. The door opened. Dr. Chen entered, hairpinned lab coat flecked with rain. Captain Stable moved to ICU. No more seizures. We'll monitor 24 hours. Thank you, Keisha said. No, I thank you. Dr. Chen replied, eyes lit, as if seeing a circuit close after hours of flicker. You flew like placing a tube in the OR, soft, precise at the exact moment. A young officer rushed in, whispered to Rodriguez, Sir Media clustered at the gate. Passenger clips already online. There's one. A first-class man talking about economy, it's spreading. Jamie glanced at Keisha. Her face didn't change. What do they need from me? We can shield you from the press, Hayes said through the screen. But the story will find you. Let it, Keisha answered. Tonight I sleep. Rodriguez chuckled. That's the hardest order. Richard Blackwell stood outside the glass, soaked like a bill left in the rain. Victoria beside him, child in her arms. A sergeant looked to Keisha for approval. She nodded. Let him in. Richard stepped forward, like learning to walk again. I apology. Later, Mr. Blackwell, Keisha said softer than before, but still in that frame. Now go to your family. Tomorrow begins. He swallowed. Thank you for not letting me learn that lesson in the clouds. Keisha didn't reply. Rodriguez handed him a dry towel. Victoria whispered, Thank you, Colonel. On the plane I was a pilot, Keisha said. On the ground, I'm a person. No need for Colonel. Passengers were being loaded onto low-deck buses from the ramp. Many turned back toward the glass door, some raised hands in salute, some laid palms on their hearts. One boy drew a plane on the fogged window and scrawled a giant S across it, grinning. Jamie saw it and broke silent tears, rushing like sudden rain. Wilson Keisha touched his shoulder. Go sleep? Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow I'll tell you about Tempest Shield. Really, really. But short, she smiled that extra millimeter. We don't live in old stories. The storm still rumbled outside, but inside this little glass booth, the sky had sat down and placed a hand on the shoulders of those who held it up. An officer brought papers for signature. Keisha signed in clear strokes as if writing one short line into the log: landed, alive, handover, sleep. Before leaving, she paused at the doorway, turned to Rodriguez commander. "Thank you for keeping the frequency clean." "We keep it clean so you can do the dirty work," he half joked, half true. Keisha nodded. "Good. Next time, if there is one same again." She pulled on her cap, tugged her coat, stepped out onto a runway dimmed of lights. A vehicle waited. Rain still fell light as the tale of a long story turning its page. In the distance, runway 14 lay quiet as a roll of white tape still marked with the dark skid of her landing gear, another signature of hers as long as a night. She drew a deep breath. For the first time in hours, no one waited for her answer. The sky for now asked nothing. Tomorrow, half the world might call the name Spectre. Clips might spread. Questions about who deserves which seat might shift. But tonight, 3 things were enough. 312 people still breathing, a crew still standing, and one woman who had just set her burden down on the back of a chair in a neon-lit room. Keisha rested her forehead on the car window for a second, eyes closed. Sleep no longer crept like a thief. It walked in openly, sat beside her like an old friend. The Pentagon. High ceilings, flags, the military band, steady as the heartbeat of a city standing tall. Keisha Warren stepped onto the stage in deep blue dress uniform. Jamie Wilson sat in the 3rd row, wrist trembling faintly with pride. Dr. Patricia Chen sat beside Commander Alex Rodriguez, smiling the smile of someone who had seen the right thing happen. The Secretary of Defense lifted his head, reading each word slowly, so the walls of history could hear Colonel Keisha Warren call Sign Spectre for extraordinary action in a life-or-death situation, for pioneering navigation skills applied to a Boeing 747 in the heart of a historic storm, for saving 312 lives, for proving that leadership has no color. Leadership has character. You are hereby promoted to Brigadier General. Applause rose and struck the ceiling. Jamie closed his eyes for 1 second to lock the image in his mind forever. Spectre receiving her star. Keisha stood tall, steady, searching for no words. When the microphone reached her, she said only, "I accept because my team deserves it." After the ceremony, a closed briefing, General Patricia Hayes opened a slide. The words "Storm Navigation Protocol Warren Method" appeared. The room fell silent as a chapel. "Standardize into curriculum," Hayes said. "Civilian emergency versions will reference the short form. No storm will decide fate alone again." Pens raced like fire on paper. A week later, the New England Journal of Medicine published Emergency Aviation Medicine, G Management in Severe Weather Landing, co-authored by Patricia Chen and Keisha Warren. Their names side by side like wings and engines, medicine holding the pulse, pilot holding the path. Jamie Wilson, at his final check ride, stood before a spotless white A350. The chief examiner asked, "Who taught you to stay calm?" Jamie smiled. "Someone who didn't teach," she ordered. A month later, Captain Jamie Wilson sat in the left seat, carrying in his breast pocket a photo of runway 14 foamed at Dover, a charm no one else knew. Meanwhile, in the world where video spreads faster than reports, one passenger clip became the second storm. Richard Blackwell, in frame voice, loud face, harsh, mocking economy demanding control, then silenced when the name Spectre rang out. 50 million views. Comments poured like hail. Seats aren't qualifications. Privilege can't buy skill. She's my pilot. Within 3 months, Richard's investment firm lost 80% of its clients. Departure emails were short. "We want someone who discriminates, risk not seats." The fund collapsed like a bridge built on false pillars. Banks cut limits. Shareholders demanded resignation. The first article called him an expensive case study in awareness. At home, Victoria placed divorce papers on the table. Her voice wasn't loud but filled the room. I once thought I married a man who respected achievement. I lived 15 years with someone who mistook privilege for competence. The court approved. Assets split, custody to her. That night, Richard picked up 12-year-old Lily, passing a downtown billboard, Keisha in uniform, star gleaming. Beneath leadership has no color, it has character. Lily frowned. Dad, why are people angry when they Google your name? The weight hit Richard's chest like stone. He pressed the gas as if speed might outrun his reflection in the rear view. On a rainy morning, Richard stacked files signed to the salesman's box at a used car lot. His new boss clapped his shoulder. It's fine, living means selling what you've got. Richard looked at rows of faded sedans, breathed the smell of damp fabric seats and warming plastic, the scent of things once beneath him now pressing him to the ground. Across the line, Keisha spoke less to the press. She chose training school simulators, academy halls. At one Q&A, a cadet asked, "Ma'am, how do you deal with prejudice?" Keisha held the pause a beat longer. "Let them underestimate you," she said. "While they waste energy doubting you, spend that same energy sharpening skill, the kind they can never deny." The room rose in applause. Somewhere in those dark eyes a child found their path. A new scholarship launched, Warren Scholarships for pilots from minority communities. The website had few words. Its first line read, "Don't ask if we have room for you. Ask if you have room for us in the sky." Applications poured like summer rain. Night. Keisha stood on her balcony, city lights glittering below. A message from Dr. Chen, Captain Mitchell, discharged. Stable. She smiled. A message from Jamie, a photo with new wings pinned to his chest. "Ma'am, I'm flying left seat." She typed back, "Fly it straight," then added, "When the storm comes, find the eye." Across the street, a boy pedaled his bike, a small flag tied to the seat post bearing the word Spectre. The wind folded it so only the S showed. No one knew whose initial it was, only that it was a sign to follow. That night the city slept. The storm did not. The news did not. But one thing stood still: the place for the skilled vacant too long finally had a name on the chair. International Airport. Concourse B. Flipboard, clattering letters, coffee stand hissing steam, loudspeakers calling flights out and back. Keisha Warren, now a brigadier general, walked through, flanked by 2 aides and a security officer. The star on her shoulder made no sound, yet everyone heard it. At the end of the row of seats, Richard Blackwell stood. The dark blue uniform of the used car lot was neat, his small suitcase patched where seams had torn. He swallowed hard, stepped forward, like onto thin ice. "General Warren," he said, his voice stripped of metal. "I want to apologize, for real. Not because I lost things, because I was wrong." Keisha stopped. Her eyes landed on the man before her, but without tension. She had once said apology later, and today was later. He seemed smaller before her, not from rank, but from the weight of 3 years. "I lost almost everything," Richard said. "Company, reputation, family. Not because of you, because of me. Because I thought a seat raised my value, not my work. I thank you for not letting me learn that lesson in the clouds." Keisha nodded just slightly. "Mr. Blackwell, she said you didn't lose anything. You just discovered you never had it." His eyes blinked as if someone had tugged a curtain softly, yet light still pierced through. Privilege is not achievement. Keisha went on her tone even. Respect is not inherited. Competence isn't in appearances. Each word fell like bolts, locking a door against the wind. Around them, the concourse shrank into a circle of quiet noise out there. Stillness here. Richard nodded. I'm learning to stand against small things. Selling cars, letting people finish sentences, keeping my mouth shut when it doesn't need opening. He gave a sad smile. You don't need to forgive me. I've had the punishment I earned. Keisha held his gaze a beat longer. Forgiveness isn't my business. My job is bringing people home. That day, you and your family got home. That's enough. An aide tapped her schedule. Gate B12 boarding. Keisha nodded thanks, then turned back to Richard. Keep your new job. Do it right. Respect the person in front of you. Talk less, listen more, the rest time we'll handle. Richard pressed his lips. Thank you. Not for advice, for the chance to say this without being thrown out. Keisha walked on. Her escort followed. The star on her shoulder caught one line of sunlight through the hall, flared, then faded. She didn't look back. A month later, an aviation magazine ran a long feature Spectre flying through the storms. The cover was Runway 14 with its streak of white foam. Inside, one line of hers was quoted everywhere. The best revenge is success. The rest, let forgetting do its work. The book of the same title appeared 3 weeks later. Royalties poured into the Warren scholarships. Dr. Chen's podcast invited Keisha to speak on G-force and the human condition. G isn't only in the body. G is in life when we're crushed, when we must hold the line. At the Air Force Academy, blue uniforms filling the hall, a cadet stood shoulders slight, eyes burning. Ma'am, what if one day I don't believe in myself anymore? Keisha stepped down from the podium face level with him. Then borrow your team's belief. Pay it back later, with interest. The room laughed. He laughed last but hardest. One evening, Keisha passed through the Central Square billboard still there. Leadership has no color. It has character. In the corner, a new poster. Jamie in the cockpit, captioned, "My mentor is the storm." Keisha paused 1 second, touched the pocket where she kept the old boarding pass from that fateful flight. Creased now fold, darkened like a stroke of ink. Richard walked home from his shift toolkit swinging. An old sedan stopped. The driver, an elderly woman, rolled her window. "Son, do you sell one with a seat good for my back?" Richard smiled truly for the first time in years. "Yes, ma'am. I'll find you a seat that's worthy. No more first class or economy, only worthy." And this time he understood the meaning. At year's end, in her final interview, someone asked Keisha, "If you could leave one sentence for the kids." She looked straight into the lens. While they're busy underestimating us, we spend that time becoming unforgettable. The camera light shut off. The room was silent. Outside, the sky was gathering clouds in one place, clearing a path for morning. Keisha glanced at the door, another flight waiting. And if one day a loudspeaker again asks any fighter pilot on board, you already know the name to be called. You know the answer. You know where the sky turns when it needs someone to hold it. Air Force Academy Tactical Storm Simulator, the green lights flashing like the sky packed into a glass box. The wraparound screens filled with gray cloud walls, lightning scribbling like giant circuitry. Keisha Warren stood with arms behind her back, the calm gaze of someone who had set the heartbeat in rooms like this before. At the center seat, Aaliyah Brooks, 22 braids, neat eyes full of sunlight, wore her headset fingers hovering on the yoke like touching a new instrument. To her right, Noah Carter, weather dynamics specialist, had the shear panel open, ready to drum the wind. "Where do you enter the tube?" Keisha asked, voice low, clipped. "When the pressure drop holds steady, long enough to maintain VS 4000 for at least 60 seconds, then ease to 2000 below the shear layer," Aaliyah answered without glancing at notes. "If a microburst hits at flare feather throttle kick rudder to hold, axis never break, deep on foam. Steer with rudder," Aaliyah said, hand squeezing the yoke like a nod. "Begin." Keisha flicked the switch. The room roared. The storm mouth opened, swallowing the simulator like a dare. Lightning flared, side speakers poured in rain and metallic rattles. Crosswind 120. Gust 160. Noah called. Aaliyah curved the nose, slipped the jet onto the wind's back like a surfer finding the right seam. VS 4000 Noah. Hold Aaliyah. Bank 7. The needles wavered, then obeyed. Don't try to beat the storm. Keisha leaned close voice only for Aaliyah. Make the storm think it's beating you. Aaliyah breathed, steady nudged 0.5 millimeter. The center line lights crawled back into place on the screen like a snake charmed by music. The simulator where dozens of classes had sweated out fell silent, but for VS counts, G counts, and measured breath. 70 Noah. Eased to 2000. 2000 set Aaliyah. G 1.3, 1.2. Perfect, the bioscience monitor said. The virtual jet kissed the foamed runway with a short landing, poppy lights, red, white, like 4 even heartbeats. Applause from the back row. Aaliyah pulled one ear cup off, smiling through a tremor. Keisha didn't clap. She laid 2 fingers on the cadet's shoulder, 1 beat only. Tomorrow, scholarship office. Sign, Warren. Scholarship papers. Fly it straight. Yes, ma'am, Aaliyah, whispered eyes misting like drizzle. Baltimore Neuro-Emergency Unit. Dr. Patricia Chen, scrubbed out of a brain intervention, stepped into a small lecture hall. G Management in severe weather landing case, Dover 14. G-graphs rippled like waves, one dangerous spike at flare, then smoothing out. You think G is only in planes, Dr. Chen said, scanning students. G is in patience when you pull a tube push, a scalpel turn ahead. Holding rhythm is the job. A student asked if that G had stayed 1.8 for 2 more seconds, would the captain have... Yes, Dr. Chen nodded. And who kept G from rising one-person specter. Above the clouds, Captain Jamie Wilson on the left seat of an A350 final approach, stubborn sheer. Windshift left, his FO cried. Jamie smiled faintly, an old phrase tumbling out like a charm. My mentor is the storm. He held Vref Plaus 5, crab left-kicked rudder on the beat flare, soft as setting porcelain on cloth. Wheels kissed smooth. FO turned. Where'd you learn that? Runway 14, Jamie said. Dover. A night ripped by lightning. An airline safety memo went out. Implement short-form Warren method for extreme weather training. Mandatory microburst crosswind simulation. CRM reports every 30 seconds. The last line nailed to the board, no seat defeats storms. Only skill does. Middle school playground. Lily Richard Blackwell's daughter folded a paper plane. A friend asked, "What does your dad do?" Lily paused, remembered billboards, remembered the silence at home. She looked up. My dad sells cars, worthy of the people, worthy of them. Her friend nodded. Sounds good. They launched planes. The wind played tricks, then carried them. Used car lot in summer heat. Richard polished the hood of a 10-year-old sedan. A customer, a factory worker with back pain, 2 kids prone to car sickness, stood hesitant. I need seats easy on the back, steady AC reliable engine. Don't care about big screens. Richard didn't pitch. Premium leather didn't throw numbers. He asked miles per day where the kids sat if his wife had vertigo. Then he pointed at the sedan he'd polished. This one. Solid, smooth, worthy. The man nodded, calloused hands gripping the pen. Behind the counter, a framed billboard photo of Keisha in uniform hung quiet. Richard glanced at it once, then lowered his head to sign. This time, he bowed to do the work. One evening, at a windy neighborhood hall, Keisha spoke to high school students. Don't ask if the sky has room for you. Train until the storm remembers your name. A small hand rose. What if they say I can't because I'm a girl? Keisha stepped down, offered her own pen. Write your name in the blank. If there's no blank, make one. In the third row, Aaliyah snapped a photo, sent it to the Warren Scholars Group. Our first day started with one signature. Radio Bulletin. A domestic flight landed safely during a rare weather advisory. Crew reported training under the Warren method. No dramatic music. Just a calm, glad voice. Normal now. That night, Keisha sat by her window, the city spread out like a giant control panel. She opened her black notebook, wrote 3 lines. Don't let storms have monopoly. Don't let seats define skill. Don't let success stop with me. She closed it, switched off the light. The sky outside still stirred clouds. But here, a steady pressure pocket had formed. The method remained, airs had taken it, the map was passed on. Next morning, an old boys' school invited Keisha as keynote. She replied, I'll come, don't decorate the stage, set up wind simulation. They were surprised, but complied. When the crowd cheered for her stories, Keisha asked for lights out, storm on. Artificial wind roared, stage shook. She said 4 words into the mic, trust me, sit still. The whole hall flew Dover again in 90 seconds. When the lights returned, no one asked about seats, they asked about training. By day's end, Aaliyah sent Keisha a clip herself in a small room, taping paper on the wall. Eye of the storm, calm is the trade. Keisha replied with a star emoji and fly it straight. Across the city, Richard chalked on a blackboard in the lot. Decent cars for decent people. Lily snapped a photo, sent it to her mom. Victoria texted back, good. 1 word, but its own family runway. Night, clouds, thunder. A woman slid the runway 14 boarding pass back into her pocket. Outside, the wind swept the city like someone opening tomorrow's door. Legacy doesn't need sirens. It stays because it's used. Podcast studio red light on. The host leaned into the mic. Spectre, first question, what's the sweetest revenge? Keisha smiled thin. Success and prejudice. Let forgetting do its job. And the kids waiting at the storm's edge, give them a map, point to the eye, stand behind them, and push just enough so the wind remembers their names. Leaving the studio, Keisha didn't head straight home. She told the driver to swing by Dover AFB. Damp night. Runway 14. Silent like a streak of memory. The guard shack opened the gate. Keisha stepped out, hands in pockets, wine tugging her collar. The foam had long dissolved, but the skid marks from that landing still lived in her memory like lines of ink that never faded. She closed her eyes. One beat heard Jamie's right rudder. Dr. Chen's G rising, General Hayes' absolute priority. Then she opened them and chuckled at a thought, even the sky needs someone watching. In the city, Richard Blackwell came home late from his shift. He set down his tool bag, opened his old computer, typed an email to Lily, away at science camp. Daughter, I once thought strength was in the seat. Wrong. Strength is in doing the right thing at the right moment. If anyone says you're not enough, just be enough until the storm has to ask your name. He thought of deleting the last line, then kept it. This time, he let the word stand. Next morning, Flight 732 cut through a band of ugly clouds. LOA blunt weather advisory wind shear. Cabin PA crackled. Is there a pilot, any fighter pilot on board? The question fell into the air like a stone dropped in a lake. Passengers looked around. In seat 17A, Aaliyah Brooks' hoodie on braids tucked economy ticket stood. I'm a military trainee pilot, certified storm sim. The attendant opened the way. Nobody asked what she was wearing. Nobody asked if she had the right seat. They made space. Cockpit door opened, metal ozone sweat. The captain was woozy, blood pressure low, FO's hands trembling. Aaliyah slid into the jump seat, voice steady. I'm using the Warren method. CRM every 30 seconds. You track fuel and pressure. I'll fly the shear corridor. Trust me. Sit still." The FO blinked, then nodded. "Trust. Andrews 121.5 open," Aaliyah called. "Request identity check Brooks flight trainee Warren Scholar." "Confirmed Brooks," the line answered. "We see you in system. Corridor clear." Aaliyah carved the jet into a curve cleaner than anyone expected. She read the storm like a poem she knew by heart, VS 4000 hold. Bank 7 set, VREF +5 for gusts. The cabin's applause froze in their throats. They held breath instead. Touch, hold, exhale. When the wheels screeched, the FO burst out laughing like ice cracking after a long winter. Aaliyah pulled off the headset, eyes wet. On the side panel, a sticker she'd placed long ago gleamed "Eye of the Storm, calm as the trade." Breaking news: Warren Scholar trainee assists in safe landing during advisory. Local TV ran it straight, no dramatic music, only the relieved faces stepping down the airstairs. At the end, the anchor read, "Leadership has no color. It has character." No longer a slogan, now default status. Keisha watched the clip in her quiet kitchen stirring coffee. She paused, replayed the moment Aaliyah said, "Trust me. Sit still." She smiled, texted, "Good job. Fly straight." Aaliyah replied with a photo of her arm headset, mark pressed deep. "My mentor is the storm." Keisha sent back a star emoji. At the Flying Through the Storms book launch, the host asked, "Why don't you talk much about your triumph?" Keisha shrugged, "I tell the method." Triumph belongs to circumstance. Method can be reused. The hall chuckled. Signing ran late into the night. A man waited silently in line, laid the book down. Richard. He didn't ask for his own name. He said, "Sign it for Lily." Keisha wrote, "For Lily Fly, your own straight line." As the book slid back, Richard said, "Thank you for the map." Keisha nodded, "Thank you for the road." That night, Keisha opened her cabinet, pulled out the old boarding pass from Dover. Beside it, a scrap of fabric cut from her jacket that night frayed edges. She placed both in an envelope marked Museum of Flight Donation. She wouldn't hoard the legend. Legends are meant to teach. Next morning, a classroom in the suburbs. Keisha chalked the board, "Don't fight for seats, learn to fly." The class laughed. She tossed the chalk to a boy in the back, shy eyes, hands in pockets. Name Diego. "Diego, how do you fly?" he stammered. Keisha nodded. Borrow the class's belief. Pay it back later with interest. The class roared. Diego grinned, shy but real. A tiny map just opened. Afternoon clouds stacked at the city edge. A text from General Hayes' Warren Method, cited by ICO, "Good work." Keisha answered, "Good team." She stood by the window listening to AC hum city noise wind outside. No PA asked any fighter pilot on board tonight, but the answer was still ready on her tongue like a password she'd never forget. And if one day you sit in an ordinary seat and hear the PA tremble, is there a fighter pilot on board? Remember this map. Remember the eye of the storm. Remember the woman who once rose from 23C and held the sky with bare hands and discipline. Remember that privilege can't keep a plane aloft, but competence can. Remember that seats don't decide worth, actions do. Then stand, say 4 words, "Trust me." Sit still, do the rest. The night in Dover ended, but the lesson remains: a seat does not define your worth only. Calm discipline and skill can bring the sky home. When the PA asks any fighter pilot on board, remember sometimes a single name rising from seat 23C can change the fate of 312 lives. Have you ever been underestimated because of your appearance or your seat? And what did you do to prove the opposite? If this story touched you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe, ring the bell, so you don't miss the next story.